All right, so we're scheduled to go on at noon, but I figured why not do some behind the scenes stuff. So for a few minutes, I'm just going to be doing some prep work and setup for the studio. I've already done a little bit, but I figured why not do some more. Just in case there's any interest in how I do my setup. So you can see I've got multiple camera angles here. We'll just go through. I went through and separated some of these. I've got some on the table under the overhead camera. I'm right now just working on supplies. I put all the brushes away and did a little bit of cleanup. Not much, you can tell it's still a jumbled mess here. So just from this back angle here, just to walk you through what I've got going on. These are some miniatures that are either started to paint with base coats or they are set to be painted. Kind of in order. I know it looks chaotic, but process-wise, that's how I work. The rest of my unpainted minis are behind me back on the other side of the studio, and my goal is to get more organization. Get my shelf of shame set up, and so that's why you can see what's on the table there is all gray, disassembled. Today in the show we're going to work primarily on assembly. I don't think we're going to get to any painting today just because I want to bring some organization, but part of that comes with being prepared to paint when we do stream painting. So I'm working on getting supplies now for my wet palette. This is just a roll of parchment paper. I'm cutting it to first starting with the width, and then I'm going to cut these down to length. So a lot of boring, kind of annoying stuff, but this helps me just be prepared for the long run. So I don't have to do as much each time I paint. Now this is for my ghetto wet palette. Again, I just use just parchment paper. Because I've been using this wet palette for a couple of years now, I know the width that I need to cut these. This parchment paper has some marks, so they are 2-inch squares basically. So just kind of follow the guide and cut. We'll do one more and then we're going to start cutting down to length. And then the rest of that, just pop it into my storage underneath. Now for the length, again, I know how long to cut these. And I do 2 stacks. I should have these on the pad. Much better. Because I end up with 2 different lengths. You can see there the different lengths that I get. And for me that works out pretty good because depending on what I'm painting, there is some that require a little more paint, some that require a little less. So the ones that require a little more paint get a little bit longer. The ones that require less get the shorter ones. And these ones have just a small variance in them. And I'm not looking for exact, just an approximation. So a lot of this prep work you never see on camera, but I think it's super beneficial to just kind of see what goes into the art of getting ready to one paint and some of the supplies that painters use. I did do some rearranging recently. One of the cameras, because of the window, it's not going to show it great, but I moved all of my paints into an area where they are a little more organized and a little more condensed, so that prior to painting I can just run over there, grab the colors I'll need, and it gives me more room. I'm able to put up, I've got some cactus and succulents, just to bring a little more color and life into the studio. Sometimes for me that's great. It helps recharge and keep me feeling good and positive. So a good addition. And then on this side I'm able to put these miniatures that I know I need to work on. So it's a win-win for me, and like I said, really is going to help me in the long run. Stay a little more organized, have a little more room to breathe and work and stream. So a couple of small changes here. Now, last week we had some IT issues that was a pain. Our overhead camera wasn't working great, so glad that our IT department was able to get that fixed so that we can stream regularly now. I don't have a guest in the studio today, but I'll tell you what, if you are ever in the Houston area and interested in joining me in the studio, whether it's to talk about RPG stuff or paint, drop me an email. All my contact information is on some of my socials. So you can find it in Instagram, you can find it on Facebook, and I know I don't publish them here on Twitch. I am not the computer savvy person. Well, maybe that's not the right word. I'm pretty computer savvy, but I'm spending a lot of time like adding all my information on. It's because I would rather use that time painting or gaming. So a lot of my other socials already have that information, so it's like, why repeat myself? And just a couple more, and then we'll get into it. Well, that actually went a lot faster than I thought. I figured that would take a good 20 minutes. But it is a Saturday, so we've got a little bit of time. Now our stream today is not going to be quite as long, just because I have an appointment to go and get a little bit of ink. All right, pop that bad boy just so nobody cuts themselves. Now with these sheets, because they tend to curl, I always put them under my mat. And process-wise, pretty simple. Put the longer ones further away, and the closer ones closer to me. Juggle and get myself the room I need here. Let's pop some stuff where it belongs in the drawer. There we go. So just looking at some of these aspects here. I painted some of these little bits a while ago, and I want to, like this one here, I gotta decide, is that candles? Or is it little urns? I think it's little urns. Little element pieces. If it was candles, I would want to go through and paint them either white or red, but I think we're safe to say those are urns and not candles. Maybe we'll sculpt a candle on one side and see how it looks, but that's for the samurai diorama that we are painting. And do a little bit more juggling back. There's the large Deo or undead samurai giant that is going to be part of that diorama. Got a base for a gold dragon. Got a couple of bugbears. Got some characters. So much going on. All right, so now that we're done with that prep work, so you can see these ones laid out here on the camera on the bottom left. So these miniatures here are all characters. They are out of the Bones 5. Most of them are out of the Dungeon Dwellers pack. And as we're doing our Wednesday show, picking out miniatures to use for inspiration, one of the shows we had one that we had to assemble. So I thought, why not today work on assembling these and then getting them all together with the other ones. So the others, I have a bag of them that are all assembled that we can pull from for our Wednesday show and create a character based off a miniature that we pull out of the bag. But this share here is all unassembled. So I thought, why don't we work on assembling these just so we get the bags all empty. There's no assembly required when we're doing our show on Wednesday. We can just focus on pulling the miniature out and working on the character. In the same vein, I have some large miniatures that I have not been able to touch yet. They also require some assembly. I thought, why not start assembling those so I can paint them as well? Because they're larger, they're going to take a little bit longer. I can paint them in between when I'm painting some of my other miniatures. So it's not something that I'm going to start to finish in one session. These are pretty intricate, like I said, larger miniatures. These are more, these are really competition pieces, and with a couple of strike-offs. I think 2 of them have some strike-offs. So they are designed more for the artistic aspect and not the gaming aspect. So I'll spend more time on them. So I want to get these prepped up and ready to go so that, again, they're not in boxes, they're ready to paint, and I can start painting them because I am dying to get some of these started and being worked on and then ultimately finished, and being able to get them up on my Instagram and start entering them into some competitions this year. So that's my goal with our show today. We've got about 4 minutes until we start, and let's see, a little behind the scenes peek. So in one of the campaigns that I run, one of my players printed out a miniature. I'm going to try to keep this off camera for a bit, and painted it or printed it off, 3D printed it, and brought it to me, and I am absolutely blown away. So while my player has intended this to be a gift for me, I'm going to use it as a table element. So it belongs to the group, but it needs a little bit of green stuff work yet. First, I have to do some photos of it. I initially was going to do that this morning, but it's so massive. In my homemade light box, it just does not fit. But this is the miniature. Now the player knows that I love dragons. Look at the size of this massive gold dragon. I mean, just amazing. And just a fierce sculpt on this bad boy. So wicked cool. I am so excited to start this one as well. Like I said, I've got a little bit of green stuff to do, but first I've got to photo it. I was hoping to do it this morning, but when I got my light box set up and put it in there, it's so massive it doesn't even fit. So the photos are not going to be perfect, but I'm going to go ahead and photo it, and I'll probably pop a couple of photos on my Instagram just as the start point, and then later I will post some when it's completed. So a very cool sculpt, fantastic gift from one of my players. Again, I want to thank them, and just to reiterate that this is going to be a table element, so belongs to the group. It's a beautiful, amazing piece, and wow, what a fantastic gesture. So thank you. I won't use their name just because I try to keep, a little bit of anonymity. I like to keep people anonymous unless they specifically say they want to be called out. But fantastic. When he starts doing these professionally and selling them, I will make sure to tag him in the images so that people who come across that post will be able to reach out should they desire. Get a little drink going on. Excuse me. Okay. So we're just a minute out, so I am going to adjust the cameras. If you have come here a little bit ahead of time, I appreciate it. Now it is time to start digging in to our show. So that was the behind the scenes a little bit that's early. We're going to go through and just talk about the different miniatures as we start assembling them and just going. So don't hesitate. If you have questions, comments, concerns, anything, pop them in chat. I do have my chat open, so I'll be able to see. And yeah, let's start jumping in. So my name is Joe. I am with Green Oaks Gaming. It's actually Green Oaks Arts and Gaming. So GOAG is the acronym of it. But we generally go by Green Oaks Gaming, and I am a avid RPG player, GM, miniature painter, but I do a lot of different art aspects. So I also do a lot of landscape paintings in oils, as well as skateboard deck paintings, and I've always been absolutely fascinated with both art and fantasy elements, even sci-fi fantasy elements. So miniature painting has come natural to me. I am an avid collector of miniatures, and today's show, rather than doing any painting, we're going to work on just some assembly bits. So we're not, I doubt, going to do any paint slinging today. We're not going to muddy up our water. We are going to focus on assembly. So in order to do that, I have got my super glue. I have got a little bit of green stuff. I have got my hobby knife. You can see on the board here we've got a lot going on. There's a lot going on. So we're going to talk about each element kind of in turn. So this fellow here, you can see, this was actually a defect. So it has a little bit of support, I guess. They are 3D printed support that needs cleaned up. And then just a little bit of elements where the acetone did not smooth it out. But in some ways I kind of like it on some of the parts. But the big call is, as it was getting close to finish, the foot did not complete. So it's got this big error on the foot. And this one here, I am going to still go ahead and do just a little bit of light trimming to break this aspect off. And then when I base the miniature, I will use some green stuff and just complete that foot. that way we've got a good consistent sculpt. But I want to wait until I get the base element, which is going to be, I'm going to use a wood block. Initially I thought I had a 2-inch wood block, but alas I don't, of the right size. So I have a wood block, but I want a 3-inch wood block so that I've got a good firm base. And I can put some elements here, like I said, green sculpt on the foot, and I'm going to make it look like there is stonework on the ground, and maybe pop in a couple of elements of this figure being like in a library or something, so maybe a scroll or something, but a wicked cool element nonetheless. I can't wait to start painting this fellow. So I will probably go through and get that wood base first, and then drill out a couple of supports so I can pin it onto a wood block after I sand down the wood block and get it ready to go. And that way I can start painting this miniature. But such a cool miniature. It is like a dragonborn, and I would say wizard with the spell book and the scrolls. This one I am super stoked to be able to get cleaned up and yeah, on the table. And you see for some of the cleanup, there's a little bit of a mold line here, and there again, this one here just had the defect on the foot, and then just a couple of little elements that did not get cleaned up really well in the acetone wash. And that was just because the artist did not want to spend the time because it had the defective foot. So I told him, you know what, I'll take that definitely, and do cleanup and resculpt the foot and get it painted. So it won't take a whole lot of time, but definitely something that is really cool. But doesn't require a whole lot of assembly. So we're going to move that into the prepare to do. Now there's this big piece here. I'm going to wait on that one. This element here, you can see there is a waist. Where's the rest of this one? Where's the rest of this one? I am missing part of this miniature. Well, okay, I'm going to leave that aside because, oh, it's in the bag. It's in the bag. Jeez Louise, I'm losing my mind. Absolutely losing my mind. So this miniature here has this body. Now what I want to do is just go through and look at elements that will require some cleanup before I pop this together. Where am I going to have the toughest time getting to? You can see there's no pins or anything. On this print you can tell where the elements of the supports were. So I'm going to clean those up. And for me, with these resin prints, they're very similar to what I do with bones, to where I just use my hobby knife and kind of scrape to smooth out. Now I have tried also using some of my jeweler's files, which I use a lot on miniatures, to see how those interact with both bones as well as some of the resin printed figures. And the jeweler's files don't do too bad. However, I can say A lot of it depends on the quality of the file. If you get one that isn't super good quality, it's a little rougher, so it does not, it's not quite as smooth. You get a lot more aggressive scratching, I guess. So if you use jeweler's files on miniature cleanup, make sure you've got good quality and that the files will actually file and not just scrape or scratch, because then you'll have to go in and do more cleanup anyhow. This one's got a little bit more cleanup than I anticipated, but that's okay. Like I said, we've got some time. These miniatures are actually absolutely beautiful. You'll see when it's assembled here shortly that the sculpts are absolutely gorgeous. Again, I just want to make sure that I've got good smooth surfaces where those support beams go in the 3D printers. Depending on how clean the acetone gets it, like this one here has left divots. Sometimes it'll leave almost like sprues. So depending on, I guess, the printer itself as well as the materials that are used, will determine whether or not you've got these kind of divots or if you get sprues. And then also, as the artist finishes and treats it, are they doing an acetone wash to smooth it out? Really makes a big difference on this element of cleanup. Some of them don't require this amount of cleanup. It all depends on how the artist finishes them up. I'm just going through, kind of feeling my way. Oh, I'm not even on camera. Let me readjust here so that I can be on camera. I apologize. So I'm really focused on this back area because some of that flowing cape or cloth will block some of this out. So I won't be able to get in here with a hobby knife the same way to do this cleanup. So I want to get as much of this element done as possible prior to assembling this torso. And just a little bit here on the shoulders, shoulder blade area. Kind of one on each where those supports were. I am not a 3D printer. I do not use 3D printers. I'm not a sculptor, I'm just a painter. So all the processes and everything is just what I've learned from the actual artists, from the actual sculptors. And I could be saying some things wrong, so I don't mean to mislead anybody. if I make a misquote, it is just because I am not the most knowledgeable about that aspect. I just want to check here because this arm will plug in here. I just want to check and see. That's going to need a little bit more cleanup there. In a delivery, it sounds like. For a Saturday here where I'm at, we've got some pretty good weather, so I'm kind of excited. We're getting into spring. Really ready for it. I am not a cold weather type of person. So as spring has sprung, I'm really excited. I'll do a little bit of this same cleanup here. Just because, again, before assembly, I want to make sure that we've got a good fit. I would just as soon have to green stuff as little as possible for this miniature. Still quite a bit. May make more sense to drill this out a little bit more. But I don't have my drill kind of set and ready. Let me grab it real quick. It's not far, which is good. We will probably need this anyhow for some of the cleanup that we've got to do. Too loose. And the other side's a little too big. It's okay. Let's switch gears. I need a new bit. That one that I bought is perfect for this miniature, but for my 28 millimeters, it's a little big. So I've got this one here. This one will work. A little smaller than what I like, or what I would prefer, but we'll make it work. Oh, that's so close. So close. We're going to go just a little bit more on this drill and then a little bit more on the hobby knife. Make sure we get a good fit with that little bit of pin. Very close. That'll require very, very little green stuff. So I'm happy there. So move my tools aside a little bit, and that arm is good. Now this arm has a lot of scaling on it from the supports, as you can see. So this one will require a little bit more work. Move this one out of the way a little bit. Excuse me, my COPD. It's not helping because the cedars here are really starting to drop a lot of pollen. So everybody with any type of allergies to pollens has been it's been rough. So with this, the biggest thing is once you get that good smooth area, we'll give it a good washing. Make sure we get all the oils off of it. Then we'll actually base coat it with I use the Reaper Bones paint. It's a little bit denser, but it works very much on, I've noted, on 3D prints and some of the softer plastics as a primer. That way I'm not using any aerosol type primer. And it's heavy enough that any minor inclusions that you get are pretty well hidden. So works really good. A little bit on the hands. We want these hands to be super smooth. Very dainty fingers here. Makes me a little nervous just because the sculptor did such an amazing job. I don't want to mess anything up. There we go. And again, I just want to check and see the areas that are going to be the hardest once assembly is done to do any cleanup. All right, that looks pretty good. Pretty decent fit. I'm going to use just a drop of super glue gel. Pop this figure together. I'm going to hold it just for a few seconds. Just to make sure it adheres really well. I see some messages. Let's see what we got. Oh, I do have an Instagram. Thank you for asking. Let me pull it up here real quick so I can make sure I steer it in the right direction, because I don't know it off the top of my head. It is, and I'll type it in the chat as well. It is Cerebro1974. Not super original, because I started many of my socials back in 1994 5. And so there's a lot of corn to it. And oh yeah, on the camera especially, the colors get washed out quite a bit. Just because I don't use like a super great camera, and even cameras in general tend to really, depending on the settings, if you're great at working on your settings, you can get a lot better color capture. And I am horrible at it because I am very lazy when it comes to that. I would rather not dink around with my camera settings and speeds and all of that stuff. Those, 5-10 minutes, I would rather be painting or gaming or something. And I know it's horrible. That's a horrible thing for an artist to say, but I've never been one who's been like over showy, I suppose. So from my aspect, it's something that I have always meant to be better at, but never have been better at. And now we'll pop a little bit of this gel glue onto the arm. And get that attached as well. And a little bit of green stuff will be needed here, but not too bad. In the big scheme of things, again, because this is an early 3D print from this sculptor. This was like a test run, and I don't mind doing little bits of green stuff repair. The sculpt itself, I think, was so dynamic. It's just absolutely a gorgeous sculpt. So I was like, oh, I want to paint that. I'm already starting to envision, some of the colors and everything I want to do, and make it look like she's actually got tights on, because she's got these like shorts on. There are little bits where you can see like slits in the shorts, but I'm going to make it look like she's wearing tights and then skin tone there. But definitely a very dynamic sculpt. You can see a lot of the errors and everything there. So while those elements are drying, remove her other bits here. There's her head, and then a spell book with pages coming out. Kind of another cool little element that snaps into it. Let's move on to a different one, just so we can keep some assembly going. So this one here, again, very dynamic archer. So this one, there are two elements of it. I've always been a fan of rangers in Dungeons and Dragons. So like first edition especially, and then into second edition, rangers were one of my favorite classes when I got to play them. Rangers and clerics, for some reason. I just really have always been big fans of them. And so this is a sculpt that my wife actually got me because she knows I'm a big fan. So my goal is, before I paint this one, I'm actually going to use some thread and get that onto the bow as well. But this one is kind of cool. It came with this kind of decorated base, and it's not like super intricate or anything like that, but it's just got some elements on it like moss and rocks, and I don't remember exactly how they had her posed. But I think you could do a few different things. There's a little bit of chunkiness on this foot that we'll clean up. Again, it looks like support bits. A little bit of divot with a little bit of like sprue around it. So we just want to make sure that's nice and clean. And then also with the toe on this foot, just a little bit. And not much. We just want to make sure it's nice and clean so we get good basing. So yeah, for that image, I can tell you, this goes back actually like maybe 2 years ago. That aging face app came out, and it had been about 2 years since I'd seen one of my kids. So I posted that just more as a joke of one of those that everything's treating me nice and fine. I feel great kind of pieces, and I have not stopped. Every image that I'm posting, I'm putting these big old man photos up there. And I don't know why. It's just, I think it's funny. I should update it, but there's just a part of me that's like, no, that's just too funny. That way, when people meet me, they go, "Wow, what's your secret? You're looking so much better." And then, yeah, just more comedy than anything else. I don't know why. I do like that filter though. That's pretty funny. Get her squared away here. Get her up. There we go. Oh, she's a little slippy. A little slippy. There we go. Get her in place. And then because of the gel, it will take a little bit to dry, but I actually prefer the gel over the liquid, just because you have a lot more control over it. It's not going to run everywhere. With liquid super glue, I find I have a harder time keeping it where I want it to go. So this one I'll have to hold a little bit. But yeah, another cool sculpt. And getting these assembled so that they're like ready to go is going to help me paint them in the long run. Because otherwise I look at, when do I have an opportunity to assemble and paint? Assembly always is the one slower part for me, because when I'm doing assembly, I also want to do cleanup. So if I get these assembled today, this evening I can give them a quick wash and then start painting as early as tomorrow on some of these bigger ones. Which kind of detracts a little bit, because I was going to work on owl bears today, and the druid character that we built with our character pieces, or our character inspiration show on Wednesdays. So I really was planning on just doing painting today, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, I'd like to focus and let's work on some assembly. So after this big one, we'll move into some of the small ones before we get back to some of the big ones. It's because they tend to go a little bit faster. This one may need a little bit more glue and support just to hold her in place. Just because I don't want to just be sitting here waiting for glue to dry the whole show. So we'll pop a little bit of, let's see, I got a drag in here that can give this figured, oh no, I'll do a little bit more glue here. I think it took me too long to settle it. A little bit more glue here. Get this figure settled. Move it off screen, and we will get it some support. Get a drink real quick. I got a little bit of cleanup now. That'll hold that figure there. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that Agnorax actually, I was pretty happy with how fast it went. I was really concerned that that figure was going to take a long time to do. There was quite a bit of just like inspiration driven from one of the games I play. So the party on a campaign that I'm running called The Last Light, they have like 3 paths they can choose from to adventure. So depending on early on in the game, do they go after like an undead aspect of the game? Do they go after beast aspect of the game, or do they go after demonic and devil aspects of the game? Kind of determines the path that they go on and the adventures that I take them on or build for them. And of course, the players get to choose ultimately how they want to handle it. But this group went after the beasts, which leads into the dragons. And so when I got that, I knew that I was going to use that for the adult black dragon that they would be facing. So I was under a little bit of a time crunch, and I just thought for sure, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this done in time. But it really went much faster than I anticipated. The paint scheme worked really well with the blacks and greens, that more swampiness to it. The base elements all worked well for fit. With the little bits of flocking that I put on it, it worked really well. So yeah, it went together really well. I actually, that one compared to the blue, I actually like a lot better. I had more challenges with the blue. I actually repainted the blue twice. It was kind of a pain. All right, so this is one of the ones out of Bones 5. So a Reaper miniature. And again, a lot of these, so a lot of people on their Kickstarters, when they receive them, they will spend the time to go through and do all of the assembly on everything to make sure that there's no defects, that all the parts are there. They don't get something with 2 left hands on anything that requires assembly. And I generally just do assembly as I paint. So if I come up with anything that's got errors or anything, Reaper's such a fantastic company. I reach out to them even though it's after the fact, if I feel I need it and can't live without it. Otherwise, I just make do. And so there's a little bit of slacking, I guess, that's going on my part for not doing earlier assembly on all these little miniatures. But again, until I need them, I generally tend to not mess with them at all. And for many of these 28mm figures, especially the more heroic ones, unless I'm painting them for commissions or for players, I tend to not do quite as many of them as I do monsters and villains that I'll be using in my game. So I haven't really touched these, but now that we've got that Wednesday show, I want to start doing that a little bit more. So this one's kind of cool because you can choose, do you want them to have a shield, or do you want them to do a dual wielding? So I'm going to play with it a little bit and look at both aspects. The shield is kind of cool. Well, that double weapon though is pretty cool too. Because I don't get to be a player as much, I don't know which is going to be better for this sculpt. A dual wielder with like a long sword and a dagger, or the shield. It's got kind of elven elements to it. I do see ears poking out a little bit, so maybe an elf or a half elf. Dual weapon. Or sword and shield. I think a lot of that really depends on if people play more for armor class or more for attack. There's definitely a variance. Nope, I'm going to go with the dual weapon. Now, most of my players like to be able to maximize the damage that they do because they want to drop the foes as fast as possible. And then that shield we can use as a decorative element in either a diorama or some other project that we're doing. And get him fixed to his base here. I do like that many of these sculpts no longer have the broccoli bases. They've really come such a long way thinking about those elements. And they're thinking beyond just the figure itself, which I absolutely love. I appreciate, and I think it definitely shows the sculptors thinking a lot more about the end user, the painter and the gamer. So there is a dual wielding half elf, and then we've got an element of a shield that we can use in a diorama or something. We'll maybe do two more of these before we go back to the big ones. And I'm just grabbing these at random because they all need some type of assembly. So I don't know what we're going to get. This one looks like, this one's funky. This one almost looks like some type of a villain. I don't know. As we assemble it, I suppose we'll see. The face looks maniacal almost. Some of these sprues on the bases, I do wish they would change up a little bit, just because when it takes out a chunk from the side, that's a little bit harder to hide via painting. I wish they would come out the bottom instead, but that's okay. So this one's kind of cool. It's got these like little bit of a cape or cloaky look, robes, a lot of stuff dangling, bottles. I do see a dagger, just all different kinds of stuff. Bones, wrapped up bones, pouches, lots of leather strapping. This almost makes me think like a necromancer. I mean, I don't see any skulls or anything, but there definitely is a wrapped bone. Almost like rib-like armor on the chest. Definitely a dagger in the hand. Funky looking pack. Some plates with rings. Clean this up a little bit just so we make sure we get good fit. We'll pre-fit it. Reaching for his belt. We got a little excessive there. Take some of that off on a paper towel. I'm actually really looking forward to doing I've got some townsfolk that I want to do, and there are a bunch with ladies in skirts, and I want to actually do them with tartan designs. So I'm really looking forward to doing those at some point soon too. Oh yeah, look at this figure. This is definitely a little more villainous, I would say, than heroic. All hunched over like that, and that neck extended. Just a funky, funky figure. Big old monocle on there. That one makes me think of a blend between Jack the Ripper and a necromancer, and just a horrific figure. I have to mark that as a villain and not a hero, even though it's in my heroic bag. All right, let's do one more and then we'll jump back to some big ones. Just want to make sure I get these sprues nice and clean for a good fit. This one's cool. It's got like some scale armor under a tabard. You can do a lot. I love things like that where you can bring in a little bit of element but then do some cool fabric. You can just do so much more with fabric colors that for me, I really like it. It really opens up the door on painting. You're not just stuck with grays, with blues and silvers and golds, depending on the character and the setting, I suppose, and the campaign. I mean, I love to do different colors of fabrics, especially for me for 2022. My challenge is to incorporate more colors and brighter colors, because a lot of what I do tends to be greens and browns and reds and blues in darker tones. So doing brighter colors is my personal challenge to myself. So something like this really makes me have to think a little bit of how can I make it brighter, more vibrant, and really bring some color elements to it. Even if I stick with things like blues, I still want to look at, can I make brighter blues or more dynamic blues, ocean blues. This one's got a big old pointy hood. Already has got me thinking elf. I don't know why. That more, I guess, mysteriousness, maybe. I should have opened up another glue just so I don't have to fight as much. I do like the way he's kind of looking down and away and not directly on. There again, the sculpts are getting so much more dynamic. I absolutely love. Yeah, tartan is a good challenge. I did one, and it may be on my Instagram, but it's a gal that's on a wood base on kind of a rough terrain. And so that one was modeled after Royal Stuart tartan with blacks and a little bit of red and white. Tartans are definitely a challenge. The biggest piece for me is on miniatures, you can't be as detailed as anybody would like. Me especially, because I'm very detail oriented. I want to get all the proper lining and colors and the whole 9 yards. So less is always more, I have found. For me, I generally do a tricolor palette. So I'll choose 2 primary colors. So like green and black. And then I'll have a blend of the 2 where they kind of coincide. And then I'll pick 1 or 2 augment colors, I call them. So then if I'm doing green and black, and then I've got a blend of the 2, so a deep green or a black and green, where they intersect, then I'll do like yellow over the green, just a very thin yellow over the green, and red over the black, and then where the yellow and the red cross, I'll put just a dot of white. And things like that really make it look great. While it's not an official, recognized tartan, it's tartan enough to where people recognize what it is, and you actually get a lot more, I guess, a lot more mileage out of things like that by not trying to do a fully recognized tartan. Oh, there goes my communicator. Let's see what we got going on. By not trying to do a fully recognized tartan, people are a lot more forgiving. Bear with me. I have to take this call here real quick. And hello? Okay, hold on one moment. Okay. Okay. All right. Gotcha. 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 If you give me just a couple minutes, let me get you a buzz back because I'm on the way. All right. Bye. Well, it appears that my tattoo time frame got moved up. They need me to go now. So we're going to cut the show short a little bit and then hopefully be back this evening. I apologize. I hate to cut the show short. I think we've got some good starts on stuff though. Just to go back through, we've got that one that is now coming together. Let's real quick just do what that figure will look like. Just an absolute gorgeous, gorgeous sculpt. I'm looking forward to starting painting this one. Again, vibrant colors. I'm thinking pinks and purples on this one. And she is on a like smoky base. So tying in some blues into purples there. So very vibrant coloring. I've got to see how she fits on there. And then this book element rests, I believe, like this, something like this. So very vibrant, magical. Yeah, I know it's not great. But my ink is calling, so I am going to cut the show short. I appreciate James Mack, I appreciate you being here, and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for seeing some of the production, and definitely watch. We will be back onto it and really get into more of the assembly. And then next time we'll definitely have a lot more painting because we'll have some assembly done. So thank you for joining. Again, sorry to cut it short, but I appreciate you taking the time and being here. And until next time, just keep those creative juices going, and we'll see you soon.